Hey guys, Nick here, and today I am joined by Mark Frohnmeyer, who's the executive producer of a game I'm really, really looking forward to called Marble It Up. Hey Mark, how's it going?
Nick, thanks for having me on the program.
Dude, thanks for...
Glad you're stoked.
Yeah, it's...
been exuding massive stoke on this, which we're stoked about it, but I think you were the first one of the videos that we saw that like just really cared about a lot of the same things that we cared about in building the game.
Yeah, I told you this a little like right before we got started, but when that trailer dropped, I had to stop everything I was doing for the day and just freak out about it for a little while, because it's really rare that something shows up, and I'm sure you've had this experience as a player of video games where something shows up and it just feels it's so tailor-made to your interests.
Totally.
So for people who don't know, Marble It Up is a physics puzzle platformer. Is that a fair,
like, rolling action platformer with where the real focus is on a rolling ball physics that is super engaging and fun and feels as real as we can make it. We kind of cut our teeth way back in the day on Marble Madness, which was the rolling trackball game, and then we made Marble Blast and the whole Marble Blast series at Garage Games, where the real focus was on just getting the physics as right as we could. And kind of doing an action game that didn't involve guns and didn't involve blood, but still had all the things that we loved about, really good team play, first-person shooters, for example. But was much more of an all ages, family-friendly, very colorful kind of product.
That's really interesting to hear you guys mention that, because I totally feel what you're talking about. Like that, I find that the thing that I'm most drawn to in games in general is like really, really strong, tight, responsive game feel, and I literally can't think of a better example of that than the physics in the Marble Blast games, which I played a lot of growing up. I've been really interested to see the response to Marble It Up, because it seems pretty split, like maybe 40% Marble Blast Ultra players and 45% Marble Blast Gold players, and then like 5% people who just are interested or loved other games in this world.
Yeah, like this looks interesting.
But your history personally goes pretty far back, right? Like you were involved in the Garage Games.
Yeah, so I started developing games commercially at Dynamics, and was the lead programmer on Tribes and Tribes 2. And then with 3 other guys, we split out, started a new company we really got rolling in 2001. And that was Garage Games. And we cut a deal with Sierra where we were able to take the technology we'd built with us. And so very early on, we decided, well, we need to make a game that showcases this tech that the Torque game engine technology. And I had been messing around with some Marble physics, and that ended up becoming the sort of the nucleus of the game. And it wasn't much more than that. I mean, it is a rolling ball, a start and an end, and then some items and some power-ups and hazards along the way.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple game, but ends up being a very engaging experience.
Totally. Well, it's funny because Tribes is a game that was very feel oriented, like the getting into the flow of skating and sliding down like the side of a mountain. Like I remember back when I was like very young and could not afford video games, I had like an early Tribes game like demo that I downloaded on my parents' computer, and I would just enjoy the sliding around of it. So I actually feel like it makes sense that there's a little bit of shared DNA there. Definitely.
And that was we got to this certain point in Tribes where the team would just play it all the time, because it had this real fun feel of skiing around and all that. And Marble Blast actually got to that point very quickly, where a lot of the testing was just trying to catch air off of rolling hills and stuff like that.
That's definitely a good sign, I would imagine, when you're making a game feel-based game.
It is. That's, everybody, your mileage may vary, but I definitely, the games that I like are the ones where I feel very connected to the experience, and that have this kind of very, there are a certain set of games that get you into a very zen sort of state of mind, where sometimes things just happen in the world and you're like, I'm not even sure how I did that. But that's the sort of game experience that I'm really drawn to. And so in a few instances in my career, I've had the privilege to work on games that have done that, at least for me.
Gotcha. Well, and for me, Marble Blast is like in my top 3 examples of games that generate that feeling. I'm curious, kind of to switch subjects a little bit. So what made I always felt like, and it's only in the excitement around this trailer that's the only time I've ever not felt this way. I thought that I had a very singular, unique experience falling in love with Marble Blast Ultra. I didn't realize that there was a bunch of people out there who felt the same way. How did you guys know that, like what made you guys confident that you could make another game in this style and there would be excitement around it?
I think that we were all really blown away by the feedback that happened online when we dropped the trailer. I was figuring there'd be a few people who still remembered it and were like, oh yeah, let's nostalgically bring that up. But there were a ton of people who chimed in and just sort of said, when I was 5 years old, I'd watch my brother play this, and it was one of my favorite things. And so it was really nice just to hear from a lot of people for whom the game had really been impactful. That the Marble Blast series actually was something that a bunch of people got a lot of value out of. So, we love to make the games that we want to play, and at a certain point, it really started to annoy me that there were no good rolling ball games on the market that I could find. I mean, you can find sometimes a bunch of the Nintendo IPs have really good rolling physics for like a small parts of the gameplay.
There was that part in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, they've got a bunch of rolling ball physics puzzles in the shrines, and then
right.
But it never was the central component of it.
Right.
There's the racing components where you like hitting the roll button as you're racing down the hill, and that tapped into it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the same thing, and so and with the Switch, the Switch was kind of this perfect storm, because when we read about it before launch, it was like, wow, this thing's gonna nail the mobile gaming experience, and you can dock it at your TV, and now you're playing full fidelity home console game. So the combination of that, like just the sense that they really had a home run on their hands, and then seeing just none of the major publishers jumping on board in a significant way at the beginning, to me, that was just an opportunity. It was like, there's an opportunity for independent developers anytime you have that combination of factors.
So that's something I wanted to ask about. I was really curious about why the Switch, at least for this initial launch. And you're saying that that was kind of always the vision for this game. Is that correct?
Well, I think when you're coming out with a new IP or a new game franchise or whatever, if you come out on PS4, years after launch, 80 million consoles out there, thousands of titles, making noise in that world is harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting noticed on Steam or on Xbox, but every time the new console comes out, and this has been true my entire life as a game developer. I mean, the launch titles for the Atari Jaguar, I'm guessing, did fine, right? But even if the console didn't succeed, but if you had a console that looks like it's going to be a win, and you can get out there early with something new, then you have a much wider audience of people who are hungry for new content. They're like, I want to download something cool and new, and particularly because the Switch has that really strong mobile experience. That mobile experience, I think, lends itself very well to the 30-second, 2-minute long run that you can do in a level in Marble It Up versus, a 20-minute long chapter in a role-playing game or something like that.
Totally. Well, so I kind of want to get in the weeds on what sets Marble It Up apart from the other games, because each Marble Blast game had its own sort of mechanical twist. I got really used to, as a Marble Blast Ultra player, that little gradual burst that on right bumper that you could like build up over the course of a stage. That's not in this game, right?
It was a blast. No,
the blast, yeah.
And so the blast was added as a multiplayer weapon, essentially, in Marble Blast Ultra. We're gonna have multiplayer. That's absolutely in the plans, in the works currently.
Oh, awesome.
It's not gonna be available at launch. And so we wanted to make sure that the gameplay was sort of as simple as it could be. We didn't want to map any more buttons than we absolutely had to. And so we just tweaked with the jump until it felt like it really accomplished the right sort of puzzle dynamics that we wanted, and left it at that.
Gotcha. I mean, that maneuver was always fascinating to me, because at my first 5 hours of Marble Blast Ultra, I didn't even... It was so specific and situational that I wasn't even sure how to use it as a trick. So I totally understand the desire to sort of boil this game down to its purest elements, and I get the sense that like this game is a pretty great entry point for people who maybe don't have the nostalgia for this specific type of game.
Well, and I think the big where it really separates itself from the other games that we did back in the day is just that the quality of the art and the attention to detail that the art team put on making these beautiful experiences, to me is a real cut above anything that we had in the Garage Games days. And then we got a guy named Solovox to do the music tracks. And so there's a full album, 80 minutes, I think, of music that's just bitchin'. I mean, like really good, grooving marble tunes.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the footage, so
right, yeah,
you be the judge. So, but there's like, I think there's like a half an hour of the music in what I sent you, and it's the kind of thing where it can just be on the screen in the other room, just idling, and you have like a good. So I think it will make parents happier when their kids are playing Marble It Up, and it's like it has these good sounds kind of grooving through the house instead of explosions everywhere and all that.
Totally. Well, you know what was fascinating to me about the response to Marble It Up is I kept seeing people talk about their nostalgia for that one song in Marble Blast Ultra that would just loop indefinitely, and I have that same
5 minutes of music in the whole game.
But it was really I get so emotional about that song, and I don't know if it's just Stockholm syndrome from listening to a 5-minute song for like 60 hours, or if I think on some level like Marble Blast Ultra and the Marble Blast games had like an aesthetic, and it was sort of like a programmer art type vibe, or like sort of it was this very early 2000s indie downloadable type thing that it had, and
definitely.
And I'm curious how conscious were you guys of trying to recapture the tone of those games? I know Marble It Up is its own thing, but
as an example, Alex Swanson, his very first computer games job was building all the levels for Marble Blast and Marble Blast Gold. So he was an intern. That game was largely made by two people. Alex did pretty much all the levels, and I did the bulk of the programming. There were other, Brian Hahn did a bunch of great stuff in terms of concept art. Kevin Ryan did a bunch of the early game concepting. But in terms of just, it's basically a guy right out of college, first job, made Marble Blast and Marble Blast Gold. And now it's like everybody's kind of grown up. These guys, they're married, they've got kids, they've been professionals in the game world for years and years and years, and just have so much more depth of experience to call on. And yet, they were obviously very talented when they first started out.
Yeah. Well, was there a sense? I don't really know how big the team was on this game, but you keep mentioning names who were involved in Garage Games and in the early Marble Blast games. Was there sort of a sense of like getting the band back together on some level for this?
Definitely. I think I started working on this in February, like right before the Switch launched. And I was at one of our local arcades. We've got a really cool retro arcade a few blocks from my house. And I ran into the guy who runs Pipeworks, which is a local game development company. I was like, hey, do you know anyone who works for Nintendo? So he was the one who made that connection. And then once I got a title slot approved, it was sort of like, okay, now who can I actually get to go build this game? Because I don't know if you know, I've got a day job. I'm working on electric vehicles. I founded a company 11 years ago called Arcimoto.
Oh, whoa.
To build three-wheeled electric motorcycles for the masses. And so that is my day job. Takes up obviously the bulk of my time.
Yeah.
But then this is games are fun. It's good to have a side project here and there. And so it was, I think about probably a month and a half later that I ran into Ben Garney. And Ben, another guy who came on as an intern at Garage Games in Marble Blast Ultra, he was the one who did all of the marbles, like made all the reflections, the shaders, and everything like that work.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of talked him into it. I was like, hey, if you do all the heavy lifting, we'll pull, folks together and hopefully bring out a really great game for a bunch of people to enjoy. And he thought about it for about 10 seconds and was like, I'm in.
That's rad.
And not long after that, we brought Alex on. And Alex was one who did, again, all the pretty much all the levels for Marble Blast, Marble Blast Gold, and Marble Blast Ultra. And so Ben gave him a lot more tools in terms of the physics. So in the original Marble Blast games, it was all very, rectangular and pretty static. And Ben added, created moving platforms and rotating platforms. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a lot more graphics horsepower on today's computing hardware than back, 12 years ago. And so it's just, it really opened up a much bigger palette for Alex, and then Todd Pickens is the one who really kind of cohesified the whole art direction on this game, and he's just worked on a ton of great stuff. And so that sort of core team of a few people stayed about. It was really just 4 or 5 of us through the end of last year, and then I made a random post on Marble Blast forum. At marvelblast.com, and I was like, hey, by the way, a few of us are, got the old band back together and we're making a new song. And all these people started chiming in. Like there were, I don't know, 30 or 40 different reactions to it. And a couple of guys reached out, actually 4 people reached out and said, hey, we're actually building Marble games right now. Would there be any interest in potentially joining forces? And that's what happened.
Oh, that was actually my next question. Was I noticed that I did a little digging and saw that some of the people involved in this game came right out of the community, the sort of the Platinum Quest world, I guess.
Platinum Quest, and then Jonathan and Fletcher, the 2 guys from Albios, we're building a whole new multiplayer-focused version of the game. And what was neat is that there was nothing that they weren't shooting for a single-player Switch game to start. We had very different sort of launch strategies for the games, but really collaborative, non-overlapping efforts that we'd already put in, and so that ended up letting us pull together. And I think you ask almost anybody on the team, and they'll say that it's just a stellar group of game developers coming together to make what is essentially, a pretty simple game about rolling balls around.
Right. Well, so there's so much room for, a game about rolling balls around can be a lot of different things, whether you boil it down by games where you move the ball versus games where you move the level.
Right.
And I actually was replaying the stages from Marble Blast Ultra recently, and I noticed that you could kind of subdivide the courses in that game into 2 general types. There was ones that were based around reaching the goal, and then there were ones that were sort of collectathons, where you're on sometimes a multiplayer level, and your goal is to collect
gem hunts.
Yeah, gem hunt style stages. Did you guys choose to focus on sort of one over the other for this game?
I think it's much more tilted towards just get to the end, and then a few. There are definitely a few gem hunt levels in there.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But there was a lot of experimentation that happened in this one around some kind of new level types and new level dynamics we really didn't experiment with much in the Marble Blast days.
I mean, even in this footage from the first few levels here, I noticed there's a really early stage called Learning to Turn, and you could just get to the end of the level without jumping once, rolling to the end. But I saw these little stones between a lot of you guys clearly are making a game that new players could play, but is also, if you have played these games before, you're going to be able to hit the ground running and start setting really ridiculous times on some of these stages.
And we wanted to make sure, because if you look at a bunch of the videos online from the Marble Blast games, people figured out these crazy glitches where you could jump in between a platform and get knocked, and they found routes that we had never even considered, and the speedrunners of the world, just really, it was amazing stuff. So this time, I think Alex actually really wanted to put more of the sort of stepping stones in for people, and even still, the Matan, who is one of the probably the world's most amazing Marble Blast players. He does stuff in this game that you're like, no way.
I can't wait to see what people do. I have really fond memories of I remember people would get together in the multiplayer in Marble Blast Ultra and find certain spots on certain maps where if you all dropped on top of each other, you could form a bouncing stack of marbles and then just go outside the skybox. It's something about these games clicks with people and makes them want to, I think it might be the simplicity of it, makes you want to just take it apart mechanically and find how it all works and kind of exploit that a little bit.
Definitely. Well, and it's particularly in the multiplayer. Well, yeah, and it's just that sense of, you know, you're really just kind of rolling around these expanses, and there's not. It's got a sort of a pre-Minecraft vibe in that sense, where there's not particularly in the multiplayer levels, there's no end goal to get to. You're just trying to figure out what's my fastest path to get from this section to that section, and there's a lot of that route planning that goes on. But it ends up being just kind of a fun environment to just, you know, shoot the shit with people online and you know, just mess around versus being hyper competitive. And certainly it doesn't have that griefer component that a typical online game gets.
So a thing that I noticed in your footage that I got really excited about was in the original Marble Blast games, there were sometimes these Easter eggs hidden around the levels that you can find. And it looks like in this game, you guys have gone with something called trophies. Can you kind of explain what those are, what the distinction is?
Well, there are a ton. They're all over the place. They're hidden. It sort of makes every level that has one have another prize to find, and those trophies unlock new marbles. So the cool ones, the really cool marbles, are hidden in really hard to get to spots, but there are enough you know, sort of low-hanging fruit out there that you can get a good marble collection together just from playing through the game.
Awesome. And we should also probably talk about the power-up situation. It seems like there's a lot of sort of returning spiritual successors to Marble Blast Ultra power-ups, but then there's also stuff like the time travel equivalent seems to behave a little bit differently. Can you run me through just what you guys are ready to talk about?
Well, the pause, the time pause feature. One of the things we found is that, like, if you just have it strictly stop the clock, then a lot of people will find routes that let them hit the first time pause, and then that's their final score.
Right, so that becomes the end goal, essentially.
Right, is you're 2 seconds in, and now you're competing to just get to that first time travel faster.
Yeah.
In this, we just decided that would to slow the clock to like 1/10 of the speed, something like that. So the clock just moves much more slowly, and that gives you a much wider spread of times throughout the level. It makes it so you're not just fighting to get to the first one. You're actually, if you're going for a speed run, you're going for the fastest route all the way through to the end.
Awesome. And then, so in addition to that, there's a super jump equivalent. What else have you guys announced so far in terms of power-ups?
Jump, speed, feather fall, which is something that, you know, you fall less fast and you have a lot more air control. It's sort of analogous to the gyrocopter from the original Marble Blast games. And then we took out stuff. I mean, we didn't implement super bounce, and we didn't implement some of the surface types. I think in a lot of ways it's a simpler game than the Marble Blast series, just because a lot of the stuff that didn't really have a big place in there, things like the super bounce that was a power up in Marble Blast, we didn't have anything in this game that represented that. And even when it comes to the obstacles, what we were aiming for was just really keep it simple. And, you know, people may find that it's, you know, overly simplistic and sparse, but to me, it really, that's what keeps the play really just smooth and pure, I guess. You know,
Gotcha.
And we're definitely planning on, as we go along, this is only the beginning, right? So we have a level pack that's going to drop either right on launch day or shortly afterwards. That'll be somewhere in the 10 to 20 more levels. We're going to do a free multiplayer upgrade down the pike. We're planning on adding different cosmetic features, so you can collect hats and different trail options behind, you know, so when it comes to multiplayer, you know, you really can configure your marble to look how you want it to look. But we're only really adding new gameplay elements. And by the way, in the multiplayer, Marble Blast Ultra just had one multiplayer game mode. And we're planning a very flexible multiplayer game mode system that's going to let you do everything from tag to racing to the old Marble multiplayer games. But the one I'm looking forward to is Battle Royale. You know, it's my code name for it is You Only Roll Once. YORO.
Is this real? Are you serious?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be awesome. And it's like you imagine, it's sort of King of the Hill. And this, I believe it was Ben who came up with this, but it's basically that water just rises throughout the level over time.
Oh my
And so
god.
you just have to keep getting yourself to, smaller and smaller areas at the top, and then last marble rolling is the winner.
That sounds incredible. That is. I mean, everything you've said in this interview is just, you're really speaking my language. Like,
I love my favorite part of your first video though is when you're like, how could they have been making a game just for me? Don't they realize that target audience is just one person?
Right. That's. I mean, it's really how it felt. Like, and that's. It's very rare that you get that feeling from a game, but all that really means to me at the end of the day is that you guys understood what made so many of us fall in love with Marble Blast, and everything about this just looks like a perfect spiritual successor. I'm pumped to hear that there's DLC coming down the pike too.
Definitely.
Any word on price yet?
I don't know that we've figured out the final price. I think it'll be in the good indie game price range.
Okay.
I think we believe we have a product that has lots of good replay value and all the rest, but we're not gonna price it outside the market.
Cool. Well, Mark, thank you so much for talking to me and for showing off all this footage of the game. Marble It Up is coming out September 29th. You guys just announced this morning. Which is just 9 days away. So that's next Friday, only on the Nintendo Switch eShop for now. I am definitely going to be in there on day one, and I'm really excited to finally get my hands on this.
Yeah, and thanks for the enthusiasm. Thanks for helping us spread the word, and I can't wait to actually get the game in your hands instead of just some pre-recorded footage.
No problem. Thanks, Mark.